Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2025 RSM Data Dive show. Apologies for the delayed start. Did not get home until about 15 minutes ago. But we are here for everything you need for the RSM. We're going to take our first look at the forecast, figure out if a wave advantage seems like it is developing. We're going to take a deep statistical dive into the Seaside course and the Plantation course, but mostly the Seaside course here at Sea Island Resort. Figure out the types of players, shots, metrics that generally play best around Sea Island. We'll go through Fantasy National, figure out the players who have been best in recent form in those metrics, and of course we'll end the show off with a little bit of research. Even though I didn't post it to social media, there is a little bit of research that I'm able to show you. With the delayed start, I don't want to wait any longer, so let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all the social media. As I mentioned, normally on Mondays, I post research regarding past winners of the tournament, some course info, players in the field of that week who fit those patterns of previous champions. Don't do much of that in the fall, considering how inconsistent a lot of these events are. If not, they're just brand new. But normally, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show, so that'll be out later on Wednesday evening. You want to see the players that I've wagered with my own money, which I definitely put in a few wagers today on players at numbers that I liked. You want to see that, and you want to see the players that I'm using most often in my DFS lineups. Give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a fantastic article called The Fringe. I can't recommend it enough. By subscribing to his article, you'll get his deluxe version, which has his projected ownerships, favorite plays, top values, all of that. So you really are missing out if you aren't subscribed to it. Make sure you're doing that, and go follow him over on social media. Show him some support. And then lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. I want to hear from you all. Have you all made any wagers for the RSM? If so, who do you feel strongly about this week? How do you think the course is going to play? Who is your first lean this week? All of that. Put your thoughts and opinions into the chat. I'll be more than happy to get to that. If you're not able to catch the show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it with a little bit of a delayed start. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2025 RSM. And we're going to start, as we always do, on a Monday evening with the extended look at the forecast. Good evening, Phil. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very, very much appreciated. Apologies for the delayed start as I was busy this evening. Generally, Monday night is pickup basketball night, so tried to get a little bit of exercise on Monday night before the show, and clearly went over. But it is good to see you this evening. Jake Knapp withdrawal. I have not actually seen that, so that is actually a pretty good start. I'm going to go to social media here, and don't mind me. I'm going to look at Rob Bolton. If you're not a follower of Rob Bolton, at Rob Bolton Golf, he is the one that I find all of the withdrawal information to the tournament. So I will take no credit for that. This all comes from Rob Bolton Golf. Let's see here. I knew, so as of last night, we had Matt McCarty had withdrawn. That was over the weekend for the Bermuda. And then earlier today, I did see Kevin Yu had withdrawn. So looks like we've got the open qualifiers here. And then there it is. Jake Knapp is out. And Ches Reavie has taken his place. So with that, before we actually get into the mixed condition, or gosh, I'm already on Wednesday night. Before we get into the forecast, let me go ahead and take care of this. Jake Knapp, since he has withdrawn, and I will unstar Ches Reavie since he is now in the field. So thanks for putting that in there, I suppose, in chat there, Phil. I would not have seen that before the show, and would have probably been kept talking about Jake Knapp. So Jake Knapp withdraw. I know you were very, very high on him coming into the week. So looks like you're going to have to change your angle of attack, if you will, or find another guy that you are going to be focused on this week for wagers and DFS. I was all in on Knapp. So unfortunately, these things happen, and we will try and find a suitable replacement, somebody that we think is going to play well at Sea Island. So speaking of Sea Island, this forecast that I've pulled up is the airport that essentially sits right next to the golf course. Looks amazing, honestly. A quite a difference from what we had in Bermuda with 30-mile-an-hour gusts and such. Very calm on Thursday. Maybe picks up a little bit in terms of gusty winds on Friday, but as of right now, it's way too early to determine if there's a wave advantage. But it doesn't look like there's going to be a lot of wind in play for the RSM this week. Looks like the worst of it is probably going to be on Saturday. Looking like maybe some double-digit sustained winds, gusts maybe near 20 at points during the day, but that's about it. Which is actually, fairly moderate, especially considering how exposed this course is. It can get very, very windy on the coast at St. Simon's Island. And then Sunday looks, pristine as well, a little bit chillier. Looks like they might have some weather coming in late Saturday, early Sunday, and drop the temperature a little bit with a high only of 70 on Sunday. But it looks like a great week for golf, at least early on. We will update this forecast at the start of Wednesday night to make sure we don't have any wave advantage develop. Again, it's just way too early. The super forecast only goes to Wednesday, so we aren't even covering tournament play with the super forecast yet. But doesn't look like anything has developed in terms of a wave advantage so far. So we'll close that out. And with the wind that it is, I'm going to lean towards easy as of right now. So in 2025, your top performers in the field this week for the RSM in rounds that are easy relative to par have been Gordon Sargent, Lonto Griffin, Cameron Champ, Kevin Roy, Camilo Villegas, Takumi Kanaya, Daniel Chris Ventura, Sam Stevens, and Michael Thorbjornsen and Michael Brennan. Skipping Kevin Yu and skipping Jake Knapp. They have both withdrawn. Just so you are aware, we are still waiting on Fantasy National to load the Worldwide Technologies and the Bermuda. It is not in here yet, so just be mindful of that. But there are your top performers when rounds have been easy in 2025, and again, based on that forecast, I would think it's going to be pretty easy. The only other filter that we can look at, the only other filter I feel comfortable looking at is the short course. So I'm going to have to expand this to the beginning of 2024 just to make it enough rounds for it to be statistically significant for these players. But on short courses, those defined as less than 7,200 yards, and both of these courses well fit into that. Seaside, the main course, is right at 7,000, and then Plantation course is about 50 yards longer. Neither of these crack 7,100 yards in terms of total length, so we are definitely looking at two short courses here. Your top performers on short courses in the field this week for the RSM: JT Poston, Keith Mitchell, Mark Hubbard, Austin Eckert, Patrick Fishburne, Brian Harmon, Tom Hoagie, Eric Cole, Ryo Hitsatsune, and Denny McCarthy. Let's see. Other than that, you could argue to take a look at calm winds. I don't really like looking at that just because the forecast is pretty fickle. It can change, especially at a coastal venue like Sea Island. So we're not going to look at calm winds, but that is something you could absolutely argue to look at. But instead, let's just let's go ahead and look at a deep statistical dive into some prior RSMs. Now, I am bringing up last year's leaderboard because the off the tee seemed rather off last year. Now, it doesn't look that way there, but there was a year where the off the tees really kind of got thrown for a loop. So if we go to Microsoft Excel, now normally we go through this comparison course, and you see this humongous number here. In fact, if don't mind me, I'm going to check something here in kind of the background. I'll show you a peek behind the curtain, if you will. You see how last year, at least when the stats were put in, there was a bunch of astronomical numbers here. Minus 13 off the tee for Matt McNeely, minus 15. If we go back to Fantasy National just for a moment, it does appear that those have been changed and corrected. So I'm going to have to make those adjustments on my own. My apologies that they aren't ready for tonight. But when I loaded this from last year, you see these astronomical numbers. So instead of doing that entire process for you all, because it takes a little while, we're just going to have to kind of ignore off the tee a little bit. And I think that's kind of appropriate. I don't think it's going to contribute all that much. You did have some pretty large numbers here last year, but generally speaking, you don't. Generally speaking, at the RSM, you get numbers like this: 2.8, 3.1, 3.3 looks like it, 5.4 down here from Taylor Pendrith is the highest. You generally don't get a whole lot of off the tee. So last year was clearly an outlier in terms of off the tee. Oh gosh dang it, that's not what I wanted. Look, I mean, your winner in 2022 was negative in off the tee. You generally don't have a lot to gain off the tee here. So as we go through this evening, just understand, and this is just me being transparent with you as the viewer, that the numbers or the calculations are going to be a little bit off. I need to change this because this was gathered, when the tournament ended, and this is the numbers that had come up. So with all that said, let's take a look at Sea Island, and we'll just go ahead and remove that number since it isn't correct anyway. But there's not a lot to gain off the tee here, as you can see. It has gotten a little bit more important over the past couple of years, but even if we were to look against the other full field courses, this is about 30% less important. There's not a lot to be gained in approach either. Although I will be interested to see, it's just off your screen or just on the right side of your screen, but it does look like these numbers could be correct, considering some of the top iron players last year missed the cut. A 1 from Mav McNeely. Now that I'm curious, let's take a look. Is that correct? 1, 0.3. Yeah, so it's just the off the tee that is needing to be fixed. So last year, you can see approach really didn't matter. It was much more around the green. That is an outlier. It looked like 2024 was just an extreme outlier all the way around, because you see the approach generally fairly important, even though it's still 38% less than the average full field course. There's one shot type here. It is really about the putter, because these greens are large at Seaside, so players are going to be hitting greens. Around the green doesn't really matter a whole lot. You see it was a negative factor one year. It just really played important last year for whatever reason. So we'll have a little bit in approach, but honestly, we're going to have a little bit less than what I normally do because we're going to have quite a bit of emphasis in putting. It's just the way it is. The putting year over year here at the RSM has just gradually gained in importance. So we're going to take a strong look at putting, absolutely. Distance, not a big factor either. You've got a lot of positional style holes, dog legs, that players are just more prudent. They're taking 3-woods and irons, not drivers. Distance is absolutely not mandatory around here. You look at some of these past winners like Mackenzie Hughes, like Zach Johnson, who's had a lot of success here in years past. Brian Harmon has had a lot of success here. These guys are not long hitters. Distance is not mandatory around here. 40, almost 50% less important than the average full field course. So once again, it's one of these tournaments where even though we have shot link data, much like the Bermuda from last week, I don't really see a whole lot in this page view that I'm gravitating towards. Maybe good drives gained just to make sure these players are finding fairways or they're adept enough to hit the green from the rough. But there's not a lot in the distance and fairways and greens page view that I am really kind of strongly pulled towards. The greens number is less than the average full field course. Good drives gained is less than the full field course average. So just not a lot here that I am absolutely drawn to. Moving to scoring, pretty easy. It is a lot about getting your birdies. Because even when rounds are difficult here, we still get some pretty darn good winning scores. Mav McNeely at 16 under last year. I'll change the page view for you. 16 under last year, 2023. And Adams Vinson, 19 under. Taylor Gooch, 22 under. You get a lot of low scores around here. A lot of that is due to the plantation course. But those players are only playing at one time, but that does contribute quite a bit of scoring. So we're gonna be focused on the birdies. Absolutely, you're gonna have to go low to compete at Sea Island, and you see that there. Very consistent for these 2 years, and then a little bit lower the other two. But if we compare it against the average full field course, the birdies gained more important than the average full field course. The bogey avoidance less important than the average full field course. We're going to be looking at birdies are better gained. We might actually take a look at it in a couple different ways. Maybe easy because of the forecast that we looked at the beginning of the show, how it looks like it's going to be calm. So looks like scoring is going to be pretty good for this week. I'm thinking it might be easier than usual. We can also look at birdies gained or birdies are better gained on short courses. That makes a lot of sense as well. So we're definitely going to look at birdie scoring, maybe even some opportunities as well. Moving into the meat and potatoes of course statistics here, at least for me, par 3s, 4s, and 5s, we'll see where a lot of these strokes gained fall. These par 3s are pretty even, as you can see. 0.5, 0.43, 0.43, 0.35. So really, we're kind of looking at total par 3s. Total par 3s, 10% more important than the average full field course or full field event. That has to do a lot with the Seaside course being a par 70 with only 2 par 5s. You've got to play these par 3s pretty well. So we're going to have a decent emphasis in par 3s. No real range to speak of. Moving into par 4s, you're going to have to play these well because there's only 2 par 5s. So the par 4s, even though it only says 5% more important, I'm going to have quite a bit of emphasis in here. Mainly around these 3 links, but I mean, it's the 400 to 450. 9 of the 12 par 4s at Sea Island and specifically Seaside fall to this range, 400 to 450, 75% of the par 4s. You see that the 450 to 5, this is an astronomically high outlier. This is an astronomically low outlier. You remove those, this is honestly also astronomically low. Like, it's probably the 350 to 450, much like it was at the Bermuda. And you see those ranges reflect there. So, yeah, we're going to be focused on the 400 to 450. Might take a look at the 350 to 4 as well, but regardless, you're going to have to play par 4s really, really well around Seaside if you're going to do well. And then finally, par 5s. Both par 5s at Seaside fall to this range. That is the range that has the most strokes gained. No surprise here. So what's this, about 60 to 65% of your strokes gained in par 5s come to this range. We'll be looking at 550 to 600 more than likely if we do anything with par 5s. Since there's only 2 of them, I generally don't like having a lot of emphasis in par 5s. And then we'll move to proximity. Now that we are on American soil for the last event of 2025, we can get a gauge on some of these proximity links. Total procs, right smack dab in the middle. We're even. Exactly average with the rest of the full field courses on the PGA Tour. But it is more like the 75 to 125, like what we were doing for the Bermuda, which is a little surprising because the majority of approach shots come from these 2 ranges. Now, having said that, this range has gotten decreasingly less important over the years. This one has gained a little bit. You had a very low outlier here. Very, very sure that the 175 to 200 isn't the big deal, as you can see there. We're looking at mostly 150 to 175. The 200 plus, those numbers look bigger just because of the distance from the rest of these, but those are pretty small numbers comparatively to the rest of some figures. Like the Black Desert is a 21. Sanderson Farms is a 26. This is a 17. You can kind of see just how little 200 plus matters. This is mostly for those par 5s, so not a whole lot to gain there. I am quite interested in seeing this 100 to 125 number being so large comparatively. 34.5%. Don't know how I feel about that. I'm still thinking these ranges, but I think we'll put probably an emphasis in the 150 to 175. So there's a look at some of the deep statistical dive into Sea Island and Seaside. We'll come back to Fantasy National and take a look at a few things here. Again, I'm not going to be looking at off the tee. I just don't see it mattering a whole lot this week with the club down nature of a lot of these holes at Seaside. So let's go ahead and get into into strokes gained approach. In the past 36 rounds, so long as it's been 2025, your top iron players in the field this week at the RSM: Ben Coles, Rico Hoey, Michael Thorbjornsen, Chris Kirk, Victor Paris, Daniel Berger, Doug Gim, Ryan Gerard, Mac Meisner, and Doc Redman. We might take a look at around the green. I'm not sold on it. More than likely won't be in the mixed condition model come Wednesday night, but in case I have some percent to play with, your top around the green players: Matt Wallace, Patton Gazier, Andrew Putnam, Taylor Montgomery, Chandler Phillips, Webb Simpson, Takumi Kanaya, Adams Vincent, Kevin Kisner, and Paul Peterson. You're on Carl Phillips. Interesting. Phillips he's been okay lately, I would think. I mean, he made the cut at the Bank of Utah. Not the greatest at the Bay Current. Made the cut at the Pro Core. But he is a winner in 2025. He won the Puerto Rico. Played well at Charles Schwab, which is a very short course, but that's very difficult. I don't see the RSM being difficult this week just based on that forecast. Carl Phillips is somebody I generally want to like because he's generally okay with the irons, but he's been pretty bad lately. And again, without knowing or having the Worldwide Technologies or the Bermuda, which I don't think he was in. I know he wasn't in the field last week at the Bermuda. Was he at the Worldwide Technologies? Doesn't look like it. Just the Black Desert. So, interesting. He obviously hasn't played the RSM. Let's see. Did he play the Cognizant? He did. Didn't putt well there. That's the same surface. Let's see. Didn't play the Arnold Palmer. So we only have one tournament worth of data for putting. So he's not going to rate out well there. I don't know. I have mixed feelings on Phillips. I don't hate it, but I don't like a lot of the underlying stuff recently. Particularly, like, he's been pretty bad off the tee. The irons have been hit and miss. I don't know. But Phillips is somebody that I generally like. I don't know. We'll see. Talked about approach around the green. Let's go ahead and get into putting like we talked about. Hopefully this works. Yeah, okay. We're going to start with Bay Hill. We're going to gather all the TIFF Eagle Bermuda. We've done this the past couple of weeks. We did this for the Bermuda Championship. Those were TIFF Eagle. Now at the RSM. So PGA National, Plantation Course, Kapalua, Port Royal, Sea Island Plantation, Sea Island Seaside. We'll apply those course filters. Your top putters on TIFF Eagle Bermuda, going all the way back to 2022 just to make sure we got enough rounds to make it statistically significant. Your top putters: Taylor Montgomery, Nico Echeverria, Mackenzie Hughes, Andrews Albertson, Chesson Hadley, Bo Hostler, Paul Peterson, Sam Ryder, Eric Cole, and Jesper Svensson. Skipping Martin Trainer, he is an alternate at the moment. If we invert this, my guess is Phillips is pretty low down here just because he's got one bad tournament. Don't see him in the bottom 30 or so. 131. So, somewhat bad, but not well, it's atrocious. But he's also got the small sample size here, so maybe he just had a bad week. You can attribute that to it for sure. But he's definitely not going to rate out well. I'll tell you that, Phil. But interesting, I suppose. Phillips is somebody that I've generally, kind of thrown into a lineup anytime he plays. So don't necessarily hate it. We'll take a look at good drives, I suppose. Let's do good drives gained on short courses, I guess. I don't really feel great about good drives gained easy, good drives gained short course. I don't really feel great about anything in this page view, but I'll just use short courses for tonight. On short courses, your top good drives gained players, meaning players who are hitting the fairway or they're hitting the green in regulation from the rough: Austin Eckroat, Ben Coles, Siwoo, Grayson Sigg, Takumi Kanaya, Andrew Putnam, Chris Kirk, Rico Hoey, Bryce Garnett, and Carson Young. Ryo Itsatsune is quite an interesting name for this week. I do like Ryo. I like Ryo more than more than Carl Phillips. He's a decent enough putter on Bermuda, considering he putts Poa and bent pretty bad. Very good when it's calm. He plays his best when it's easy. This is more akin to a player that I would be interested in, Phil. You think about some of these other places that fit the RSM mold, like the Sony. Wasn't great this year, but he played pretty well there last year. Finished top 20 at the RSM last year, so he's clearly comfortable with the course. The Cognizant, the same greens, lost a little bit there. How did he do at the RSM? He gained a bunch at the RSM. Didn't play Bay Hill. Again, Charles Schwab, short course, but difficult. RBC Heritage, these coastal short positional courses, top 20 there. Top 20 the Sony in 2024. I like Hitsatsune a lot more than Phillips. He doesn't have the putter going right now, which could be a concern. But Hitsatsune is somebody that is kind of interesting. So good shout there, Phil. Don't mind that one at all. There's your top good drives game players. Like I said, I don't see a whole lot on that page view that interests me right now. We'll move to scoring, and we're going to take a look at a couple of different things here. We're definitely going to take a look at opportunities. We're going to look at birdies or better. We're going to take a look at it in a couple of different ways. First way, the way that I prefer, is to match a scoring metric with a scoring filter. So when rounds have been easy, relative to par, your top opportunities gained players in the field this week: Ricky Castillo, Joel Damon, Michael Thorbjornsen, Chan Kim, Kevin Velo, Davis Thompson, Adam Schenk, Daniel Berger, Rico Hoey, and Sammy Valimaki. And birdies or better gained players: Cameron Champ, Siwoo, Hayden Springer, Nicholas Norgard, Michael Thorbjornsen, Joe Highsmith, Sammy Valimaki, Carl Phillips. So, to your point there, Phil, Carl Phillips, one of the top birdies or better gained players. I'd be a little concerned just because he's getting quite a few eagles. He gets a lot of birdies too, don't get me wrong, but you can't really count on eagles at the RSM. It's just mostly birdies. But Carl Phillips, Jesper Svensson, Kevin Roy, and Stefan Jaeger are your top birdies or better gained players. And then if we take a look at short courses, so players who are getting plenty of birdies, giving themselves plenty of opportunities on short courses, those players are Luke Clanton, Matthew Pavone, Tom Hoagie, Jackson Suber, Keith Mitchell, Andrew Novak, Ches Reavie, Joel Damon, Carson Young, and Ricky Castillo. And then birdies are better: Luke Clanton, Jacob Bridgman, Nico Echeverria, Eric Cole, Chandler Phillips, Jesper Svensson, Michael Thorbjornsen, Keith Mitchell, your boy Phil, Frankie Sapan, Tom Hoagie, and Justin Lauer. So we're going to have quite a bit on Wednesday night in the mixed condition model regarding birdies are better opportunities. I might take a look at birdies are better, both easy and short courses. Take a look at opportunities. You mentioned Tom Hoagie, first round leader. Depending on when his tee time is, I do like Tom Hoagie as a fit here for the RSM. The irons seem like they're coming back. A little bit, because they were really bad there towards the end of the season. Looks like they're coming back a little bit. He's never going to be good off the tee, but I don't think off the tee is that important this week. He's always been a pretty poor putter. And then at the RSM, he's been pretty hit and miss, but he does have a top 5. Missed a few cuts, a top 10, a top 25. A lot of it is kind of dependent on the putter. If his putter is, average or gaining a little bit, generally pretty good, His irons have been pretty good around the RSM, so I don't hate that. But much like you just mentioned, you want to make sure he is on the plantation course as well. But I don't hate that for a first round leader idea, because this is a guy that can go really low thanks to how good his irons are. We'll move to proximity. Again, I'll sort on total procs. Let me remove the filter here. I'll sort on total procs, but I'm more focused on the 150 to 175 due to what we saw in Microsoft Excel. So, even though Joel Damon is the number one total procs player, like, he's really bad from the 150 to 175. So somebody like, I would say Daniel Berger, but I don't want to ignore this range either. So somebody like Tom Hoagie, Davis Thompson, Henrik Norlander, Sammy Valimaki makes a lot of sense there. Lee Hodges to a little bit lesser of an extent, 37th in the 150 to 175. So I mean, okay. And then second in the 125 to 150. Any other players here that stand out? Not particularly. So there's a look at players that are probably going to rise a little bit. If we sort just on the 150 to 175, Davis Thompson, Daniel Berger, Tom Hoagie, Stefan Jaeger, Ben Coles, Carl Phillips, Henrik Norlander, Sammy Valimaki, Rico Hoey, and Harrison Endicott are your top 10 from 150 to 175. You might go heavy Denny, as in Denny McCarthy. Denny McCarthy I like this week. This course fits him very, very well. But a couple of good shouts here, Phil. Tom Hoagie, especially in the 150 to 175. Tom Hoagie, Carl Phillips, Hitsatsune in the top 20 down here. So, that's some promising stuff, at least. When you take a look at the course breakdown, the majority of your approach shots come from 150 to 175 and quite a few more from 125 to 150. So you would think that these ranges are going to be what's important this week. We'll go to par threes, and I'll just do the last 36 rounds because we're not focused on a range. Top par three performers in the field this week: Paul Peterson, Lee Hodges, Taylor Montgomery, Victor Perry, Chris Kirk, Sammy Valimaki, Andrew Putnam, Takumi Kanaya, Gordon Sargent, Denny McCarthy, and Ches Reavie. So Denny McCarthy, very good in the par threes. Trying to look for anyone else that you've mentioned that might be down here just outside the top 10. I don't see them. Like Carl Phillips, he has not been not necessarily all that great on the par threes. Hoagie, been horrible at the par threes lately, so that's not promising. Who's the other one you said? Rio Hitsatsune, been really bad on the par threes. So for as much as I was, really liking what you were talking about with 150 to 175 procs, these guys have not been good on the par threes. So take that for what you will. Moving to par fours, I'll sort on all par fours, but we're mostly focused on this 400 to 450 range here. So somebody like Victor Perry, Noah Goodwin, Chris Kirk, Fishburne, Matt Wallace, Taylor Montgomery, Kuchar, Sam Ryder, Mark Hubbard. Been on to a lesser extent, I guess. Paul Peterson, probably an honorable mention. Michael Brennan is your last one. He might be a stud. Again, with only one tournament of data, it's kind of hard to say because we don't have the worldwide technology or the Bermuda in here. But he played well at Bermuda, so he very well could be the real deal coming off of the Korn Ferry Tour, or maybe not even the Korn Ferry Tour. Maybe it was the Latin Americas Tour. He might be the real deal. There's your top par 4 performers that we're focused on. If you want to sort on the specific range, Victor Perry, Patrick Fishburne, Taylor Montgomery, Sam Ryder, Chris Kirk, Mark Hubbard, Matt Wallace, Trey Mullinax, Quade Cummins, Matt Kuchar. Skipping Matt McCarty, he has withdrawn. What you think of Cootie? I didn't like him at Bermuda, and he actually finished top 20 or top 25. So, I was wrong about Cootie. Again, just like Bermuda, this doesn't feel like a great fit for him because the driver is mitigated. He's also his best in the wind, and it's supposed to be calm. Like, that probably helped Cootie because it was so windy in Bermuda. I also don't think it's going to be very difficult this week. Has he played the RSM? He has. He missed the cut last year. He hit the irons great, but off the tee game was really bad. Putter was really bad. And that's not to say that this is the be-all, end-all. Like, he could have just had a bad week. Bad weeks happen. This just doesn't feel like a great fit. I said that last week with him at the Bermuda Championship, and he ended up playing well. So, I mean, if you have a strong feeling on Pearson Cootie, I won't talk you off of him. It just conceptually does not feel like a great fit, Phil. I would be much more in line with your Denny McCarthy's, your Tom Hoagie's, because I'm expecting Denny, Michael Brennan to be in the price range that Cootie is. And I know the prices are out. I just haven't looked at them today. But that's what, that's what I'm thinking of Cootie this week. It just does not feel like a great fit for him. And he played well at Bermuda 2 years, or last year technically. So he at least liked the course. Like, he's only played the RSM once, but he missed the cut. So there isn't a whole lot of history you can go on either. Yeah, that's what I can say about that, I guess. Let's go to Microsoft Excel, take a look at the early look file, and then we'll take a look at some of the research. Again, because what I talked about earlier in the show, you're gonna have to kind of ignore this off the tee. This was factored in from last year when the numbers weren't correct apparently when I loaded it in. So we're going to have to just kind of ignore this. We'll take a look at the top performers in various statistical metrics that we know or that we think are going to play very important around Sea Island. So we'll take a look at approach to start. Like Thorbjornsen gaining 8 last year. Springer gaining 6. Seamus Powers played here twice. He's hit his irons very well. Eric Cole's played here 3 times. Has had a lot of success. Hitting his irons very well. Austin Eckroat. Blair's hit his irons well. He just hadn't putt well here. Novak. Webb's hit his irons well, but he's losing quite a bit off the tee. Putter. Fishburne. So there's a look at your top iron players the past 5 years, specifically at the RSM. Before I forget, let me unhighlight Ches Reavie. And if I can find him, because I thought Jake Knapp played here once. He might not have. Gonna have to. Jake Knapp. He did play here. Wasn't the best. He obviously didn't lose 20 off the tee. That's just. I have to go and fix that. So, yeah. There's your top iron players past 5 years, specifically at the RSM. We're definitely going to look at putting. Putting is the be-all, end-all around Sea Island. Your top putters past 5 years at Sea Island. Paul Peterson, leaving a lot to be desired with the irons, but gained a bunch with the putter. Chandler Phillips, somebody I was really high on last week, and I'm very, very high, or I was very, very pleased being as high on Chandler Phillips, and he certainly paid off for me. So perhaps I should probably maybe think about coming back to the Chandler Phillips train. You mentioned David Lipsky. Lipsky's generally not a good putter. Whoops. Lipsky. Yeah, doing David Lipsky things. He missed the cut last year, looking like he missed the cut on the number since he finished 72nd or tied for 72nd. Generally better with the irons, but he's pretty poor with the putter. I don't know. It's you're playing a risky game with Lipsky. Generally, I like Lipsky for his ball striking, but with the RSM just forcing players to be very good with the putter makes it very hard for me to back guys like David Lipsky, like Rico Hoey this week, when they traditionally just aren't very good putters. There's your guy again, Phil. Ryo Itsatsune putt very well here last year. Clanton putt very well last year. Taylor Montgomery, very good putter. You always got to be mindful if a course is going to turn into a putting contest. Taylor Montgomery is somebody to think about. Surprised to see Nico Echeverria, who's had some decent amount of success, be pretty poor in all facets of the game except for the putter. Eric Cole, Mackenzie Hughes, somebody I really like this week. Mackenzie Hughes has been very good around the RSM. Jackson Suber is kind of interesting. I don't hate that. Berger, it's only one time he putt well. Svensson, former champion, putts well here. Thorbjornsen putt well here last year. There's McCarthy. You expect that. Harris English, somebody to really think about this week. Vincent Whaley. You know, I was pretty high on Vince Whaley last week at the Bermuda. Seems like I should probably be high on him again. You asked about Patrick Rogers last night. He's hitting his irons well. He's putting okay. He doesn't have a whole lot of success to show for it. So, you know, hit and miss here with Patrick Rogers. So there's a look at some of the top putters in the past 5 years at the RSM. We'll take a look at birdies gained. Guys who are just getting the most birdies. Clanton did last year. Phillips did well. He just didn't avoid the bogeys as well as he should have. Eric Cole, Mackenzie Hughes, Seamus Power, Bo Hostler to a little bit lesser of an extent, Taylor Montgomery, Vince Whaley again, JT Poston. Somebody I'm pretty high on this week, JT Poston. There's Rio. It's only one time, but Rio played well. Taylor Moore, 2 for 3. Eckroat, 2 for 2. How's Eckroat putt here? Because he's not generally a good putter. Fairly positive. Austin Eckroat, probably somebody you want to think about if he's going to gain a little bit with the putter. You know, Austin Eckroat's one of the better ball strikers on the PGA Tour, so especially iron players on the PGA Tour. So if he's going to gain, you know, a stroke on the field, you know, Eckroat's pretty live. Rogers again, Matt Wallace, leaving a lot to be desired in terms of finish or total performance, but he is 3 for 4. I do want to look at par 3s. I do think par 3s are going to be pretty important this week. So your best par 3 performers the past 5 years at the RSM. Thorbjornsen, very high. I'm imagining this might be a hole-in-one last year. Granted, it's only one time, but Seamus Power again, Eric Cole again. I mentioned it. Anytime par 3s are important, like David Skins plays par 3s extremely well. So don't be surprised if he rates out fairly high this week. There's Austin Eckroat again, Seth Tagala, Vince Whaley, a little bit lower here. Harris English again. Joel Damon, 4 for 4. How's he putt here? Joel Damon's actually putt very well here, and that's not very common for Joel. So I say it all the time. If a traditionally poor putter shows you in multiple tournaments that he likes the surface, you should probably pay attention to that. So Don't be surprised come Wednesday night if I'm backing Joel Damon quite a bit. Some others here: Chesson Hadley 2 for 4, Rogers 3 for 4, Mackenzie Hughes has played par 3s pretty well here. Last one for this, or maybe two more, and then I'll get into the research quickly. Par 4s 400 to 450. Chandler Phillips, Tagala, Thorbjornsen played him well last year. Blair's played him well, but he's not performed well here. But that's a lot to do with putting. Adam Svensson, Sig 2 for 4. Seamus Power, Mackenzie Hughes, Eckroat again, Damon again, Streelman 3 for 5. Interesting. Last week's champion Adam Shank played these links of par 4s fairly well. Taylor Montgomery's played these links par 4s pretty well. And then lastly, we'll take a look at the 150 to 175 procs, just to see if the players that have been good from that length have had, a lot of historical success. Not just one time like these players. Like Eckroat, 2 for 2. Robbie Shelton, 2 for 4, but leaving a lot to be desired. Zach Blair, 2 for 3, or 1 for 3, leaving a lot to be desired. Thompson, 2 for 5, leaving a lot to be desired. So maybe there isn't a whole lot of correlation here. Maybe not. Reevy, Harris English, Sig, Webb Simpson, Garnett. If I sort, I'm sorry, just out of curiosity, now I promise I won't. I'll get to the research. But if I sort on average finish, best average finish, and then if I filter to the players who have played it at least multiple times, what have they done with their proximities? 175 to 2, maybe? Maybe? Yeah. I don't know. These are still pretty good, solid numbers. You got one pretty bad performer in Taylor Montgomery, but Eckroat's played that, or been very proficient from that range. Will Gordon, Denny McCarthy's been okay from that range. English has been great from that range. Rogers has been great from that range. So, okay. Interesting. I think it's safe to say that 125 to 150 isn't the range we're going to want to look at. Probably not. So, interesting. All right. Let's go into some of the research that I didn't feel comfortable posting online. It didn't really narrow the field down all that much, but we'll start with the winner matrix. The performance of these champions in the years leading up to their win at that tournament. You see, Matt McNeely never really had a lot of success at the RSM. I mean, he made a couple of cuts and then wins. Ludwig didn't really, he only played it once, missed the cut, and then wins in 2023. Svensson had no amount of success before winning in 2022. But those three are kind of the new pattern, because going from Taylor Gooch on, these players have had at least a modicum of success. Like Taylor Gooch, yes, he missed a lot of cuts. He did have a prior top 25. Robert Streb, winner in 2014, wins also in 2020, but he also had a top 25 in between there. Tyler Duncan had a top 25 previously. You see, Charles Howell III loved the RSM. 3 top 10s, another top 15, and then wins. So, kind of a mixed bag here. Recently, the players haven't had to have had a lot of success. But like Taylor Gooch and especially Robert Streb on back, most of your champions had some success. So, hard to say. Just put a bet on Carl Phillips. Okay. Like I said, I'm not all that keen on him this week, but we'll see how it goes. Good luck. I put in a wager on 4 players. Carl Phillips wasn't one of them. That's what I'll say. So that's the first thing we kind of look at that the prior course history or course form is kind of hit and miss. How did these players perform, in their previous event? Decent, I suppose. Matt McNeely, top 20 the Bermuda. Ludwig, top 10 the Worldwide Technologies. Svensson was okay, fairly mediocre. You don't have a lot of miscuts in here, but the issue is we don't get a lot of strokes gain data because of the style of tournaments that these players are playing. A lot of these are international. OHL used to be the Mayakoba, so you can just substitute Mayakoba for this. WGC HSBC was in China, so really we don't get a lot of strokes gain data. Not a lot to go on there. But what you can look at is performance in the fall. I want you to notice something about all of these players, these past champions. Matt McNeely, top 20, top 10, top 20. He was playing pretty well in the fall. He was playing pretty well. Look at Ludwig, top 10, top 15, runner-up. Playing very well and playing often in the fall. 2022's Adam Svensson still had a top 15 in the fall, but was playing in the fall. 2021, is that Gooch? Yeah. 2021, Taylor Gooch. Played a lot in the fall. Top 5, top 15, top 15. All of these players going back to 2015 have played multiple events in the fall and played them well most of the time. They at least have a top 20. I think the only one that doesn't is Robert Streb in 2020, and I'm willing to throw out 2020 because of how ridiculous of an outlier that whole year is. But he even finished 21st, so I mean it's not that much of an outlier. But every other champion of the RSM had a top 20 in that fall portion. At least one. Most of these players had multiple. Svensson only one. Taylor Gooch had 4 top 20s that fall. One for 2019's winner. That's not Tyler Duncan. That is Tyler Duncan. 2019, he had a top 20, top 5, top 20 and a top 25. So make sure the guys that you are considering, at least for win wagers, have played in the fall and at least have been in contention once, preferably more, but at least have shown some signs of life. There's another narrative about first-time winners. Gooch was a first-time winner. Svensson was a first-time winner. Ludwig, I believe, was a first-time winner. Matt McNeely was a first-time winner. So right off the bat, based on just on that alone, Carl Phillips wouldn't fit Phil. But just because he's on the mind, like if we take a look at Carl Phillips, he hadn't necessarily played all that well in the fall, but he's made cuts. But he doesn't fit that top 20 narrative. You mentioned being high on Denny McCarthy. The only thing that I am concerned about with Denny McCarthy is that he hasn't played at all in the fall. And we saw just how much these past winners have been playing in the fall leading up to their win at the RSM. So that gives me a little bit of concern about Denny McCarthy, or at least outright betting Denny McCarthy. I'm not saying he won't play well, but in terms of a win, that gives me some pause. You mentioned Rio. I think Rio's actually played pretty well. Yeah, he had a top 15 at the Procore. So that makes some amount of sense. Plays well when it's easy. Plays his best when it's calm. That makes some sense. So if I go over back to Microsoft Excel, I will take out the filter. Those are the players that have top 20'd the events in the fall right there. So you can put a pause on that and check and see if any of your players are in there. But it was pretty cut and dry when I looked at that, how every single one of these past champions have a top 20 in the fall and have played in the fall. Like they've played more than once. They've played more than twice. They've played. They've gotten the rust off. So be mindful of that. But that's what I have for you all in terms of a Data Dive show. I want to thank Phil for jumping to chat, as always. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. With this being the final event for me for 2025, I'm going to try my darndest to end the year on a positive note. So thanks again for all the support, for all the wagers you've made so far this week for the RSM, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the RSM, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.